what's up to everybody? I haven't done a video in a while, but I'm going to try and start doing more of these things once more as we approach the season. Today, obviously, the thing to talk about is the NCAA and Jim Harbaugh and the ruling that just came down on Harbaugh's impermissible contact with recruits during the COVID-19 period. He went to a diner on a couple of occasions with a recruit and his father. When that was discovered, the NCAA came sniffing around. Harbaugh denied the charges. First he said he couldn't remember, then he said he didn't do it, but it turned out he had been there with the recruit and he was busted. Now this is a separate case from the Connor Stallions in-person scouting sign decoding scandal, which is still ongoing with the NCAA. We'll see what happens from that. But for this issue, the NCAA passed down a hilarious 4-year show cause penalty for Coach Harbaugh. Embedded in that is a 1-year suspension from coaching. So if he was hired right now, he would have to sit out the full season, even if he passed the show cause, which basically means a team program has to show cause for why Harbaugh should be allowed to coach over the next 4 seasons. It's a hilarious penalty, of course, because Harbaugh is coaching the San Diego Chargers. He signed an $80 million contract, $16 million per year, and as Harbaugh's attorney Tom Mars said, this is like getting a letter from your high school once you're in college saying you're suspended for not signing the yearbook. It makes no difference to Harbaugh. It's another case of the NCAA hammering someone when there are no real stakes, no actual consequences. Michigan itself got 3 years probation, which basically just means they're going to have to follow a kind of strict protocol for their program and not get in any more trouble for the next 3 years. So it's basically a non-penalty, and it's the NCAA flexing its spaghetti arms in front of the country again, and everybody's sort of rightfully laughing at them. Now, what Harbaugh, the violations themselves are not that big a deal. Level 2, I think the element that the NCAA was angry about was Harbaugh stonewalling them, refusing to meet with them, and then denying that he'd done it when he did it. But what I think is interesting about that is that is Harbaugh, who I believe is essentially an honest person. I live in Chicago. I know some things about Harbaugh when he was quarterback for the Bears here, and you won't find people who will say a bad thing about Harbaugh. He did a lot of things out of the spotlight that were very good for Chicago and the community, and only the people who were there know about him, and I know some of those people. They're Catholic school teachers in the city, and Harbaugh was a good guy here. So that's my closest connection to Harbaugh and what I know about him as a person. I think he regards the NCAA as a totally illegitimate organization. We all know Harbaugh's comments in the past about players being paid. He's been on that for years, saying the players deserve to be cut in on this revenue. Harbaugh's attorney, I think, speaks for something that Harbaugh would agree with and is factually true, which is the NCAA just continues to be found guilty of antitrust violations and cutting the players out of the revenue they create, and creating a situation where huge profits and salaries are being made by people who aren't generating the revenue, and an outright refusal to cut in the athletes based on what was essentially at its core and beginning a flawed idea of amateurism. So Harbaugh stonewalling this group and then telling them he didn't do something that he apparently did, I think he intentionally did that to express his contempt for the NCAA. And I understand the dangers of that in essentially telling an organization that is in charge of oversight for your profession that you hold them in contempt and you won't tell them the truth if you don't feel it's necessary, and the precedent that sets. But at the same time, I think, again, Harbaugh actually has some guts on this to say, I went out with a recruit who's coming to my university and his father. We went to a diner. We're talking very low stakes situations here. It was during a quote-unquote COVID-19 dead period. But essentially what he's saying is to run your sport like this is to run a ridiculous sport, is to make mountains out of molehills and to delegitimize yourself, basically. And I think that's what Harbaugh was doing by ignoring them, essentially. So once again, the joke is on the NCAA. You can go on social media. You can look everywhere. The NCAA is just being laughed at. Tom Mars, the aforementioned Harbaugh attorney, put out a hilarious post, the high school analogy, and then he also called the NCAA a kangaroo court. The NCAA, when they were investigating Harbaugh basically contacted Harbaugh, Michigan, and Mars as his attorney and said, turn over Harbaugh's records to us, his phone records, his email records, and let us comb through them. Basically just turn them over en masse. And we'll go through and we'll decide what's an infraction and what's not, and trust us with his information, which is an insane thing to try. You can't do that in a court of law, and the NCAA certainly cannot do that. And when Mars wrote back and said, listen, you got to narrow down this search, the NCAA didn't respond. And then when they did respond, they basically said you have 24 hours to turn this over to us. And Mars, of course, just didn't do it, which any quality attorney would protect his client in that fashion. The NCAA has absolutely no right to that kind of information about Jim Harbaugh without a very specific request in what they're looking for. The NCAA does not have an open mandate to investigate the entire life of someone they think may have violated their, in many places, asinine, absurd, outdated, preposterous rule book. So I know some people are upset about this. Michigan rivals, Ohio State, Michigan State, some other teams in the Big Ten, etc., cheating, lying, blah, blah, blah. I get that. That's what college football is about. If you're a rival, you're supposed to hate your rival, and you're supposed to magnify all their sins and downplay all their accomplishments. So I get it. Ohio State, Michigan State, fire the guns, whatever you want to do. Big Ten, fire the guns. But for me, with Harbaugh, those are the things that were interesting to me about this in the NCAA, and it's one step closer to a new government's model, perhaps a new government oversight authority, and getting away from this just ridiculous NCAA tyranny, basically, in which the things that Harbaugh did are considered serious enough violations to investigate and punish a program for. So that's my thoughts. Michigan, first phase of the NCAA penalties. We'll see what goes on with the in-person scouting scandal. Another one I have some definite opinions on regarding the rules around that. And I'll be back for that and plenty more to come. Like I said, I'm going to do more of these videos, guys. So let me know what you think in the comments here. Did the NCAA get it right? Was Harbaugh right to do what he did? What do you think about it? All right, guys, we'll talk soon. Peace.